Welcome to the American Institute of Architects Kansas City Chapter's Legends and Leaders program. This series highlights AIA architects and others that have helped shape our community, lead the AIA, and mentor a new generation of designers. Timothy Cahill graduated from the University of Kansas in 1977 with a Bachelor of Architecture. After working in Chicago, Tim accepted a design scholarship at the University of Illinois, where he graduated with the AIA School Medal and a master's degree in 1980. Cahill was the Chief Design Officer and National Architectural Practice Leader for HNTB, where he implemented national design programs and ensured a consistent level of quality for architectural projects across the firm. As Senior Vice President and Design Principal, he has delivered award-winning work, including Levi Stadium, the nation's first NFL stadium to achieve LEED Gold certification. Over the course of his career, Tim has garnered numerous design awards, showcasing his achievements in many aviation, sports, and workplace projects. Tim has assumed various leadership roles with the AIA community. Notably, he served as AIA-KC President in 1994, the Central States Director for the National AIA Board of Directors from 1997 to 2000, the National AIA Large Firm Roundtable from 2016 to 2025, and as President of the KC Architectural Foundation. In recognition of his outstanding contributions, Tim was honored with AIA Fellowship in 2001, a Richard Upjohn Fellowship in 2002, and the prestigious Fred Schirmer Award, the highest award from AIA Kansas. In 2022, he was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from the KU School of Architecture. Let's meet Tim.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Legends and Leaders from the AIA Kansas City chapter. And today we happen to be in Frank Zilm's house, which is his studio. It's a new environment for us and very beautiful. So thanks, Frank, for inviting us into your home. We're going to be interviewing Tim Cahill, who had a 45-year career with HNTB Engineers and Architects in Kansas City, a very wonderful firm. And so welcome, Tim. Thanks for coming. I've been looking forward to this. Well, we've known each other about 40 years, so it's nice to see us grow up together, do our whole careers together, and now talk about yours, what you've been doing all of this time. Why don't you start with just telling us why you decided to become an architect?
Okay. Well, I was fortunate to be born with the gene to be able to draw, just like my mother and her dad. And so I really drew a lot as a very young child, and had the ability to draw and to think three-dimensionally. And so the biggest influence for me to become an architect was my mom. Even though my father was an engineer and both my grandfathers were engineers as well, so I was kind of around the construction business. My grandfather was a bridge engineer, my dad was an electrical engineer, and then my other grandfather worked at Bendix. So I'm not sure what exactly he did there, but it's all secret to us. But my mother taught me how to paint. She taught me about the arts and the built environment, and so she was the biggest influence for me. But I knew I wanted to be an architect probably about the age of 5.
Wow.
And it's always what I wanted to do. And I had one grade school friend whose dad was an architect, and that just made it even stronger for me. That's what I wanted to do.
Well, so that's a long time. Basically your whole life you thought you would be an architect.
Right.
Well, you went to the University of Kansas. You grew up in Kansas and went to the University of Kansas. And at the School of Architecture, did you have any mentors there, or what was that experience like?
I did. My favorite professor there was Professor Wayne Drummond, my third year. He was a great designer, great teacher, great mentor for me personally. And then Wayne went on to become the dean at the University of Nebraska. I knew him professionally through AIA later on in my career. And so he was, and then my fourth year I had Dave Evans of Gould Evans, who's of course their firm because it's a national firm now run by Tony Rohr, a good friend. And so, but those two teachers really stood out for me at KU in terms of pushing me in design. I did well at KU, and then Sandy and I were married when we were at KU. So my fifth year, I worked at a small firm in Topeka, and then as soon as we were done, we moved on to Chicago. So, but I have great memories at KU, and I'm still involved at KU on the board, on the Dean's Advisory Council, and have been for many years.
Well, in fact, you went to Chicago and you also went back to school again fairly early on.
Yes, I did. I worked almost 2 years in Chicago. I wanted to work right downtown at a big city and be involved in larger scale projects. I've always wanted to work on large scale projects with kind of difficult programs, if you will. Not specific building types, but just complex building types. And so I had the experience of working on high-rise and mid-rise housing in Chicago with they were all IIT partners except one who went to Harvard, and he's the one that hired me, and I got to be his protege at that firm. It was great. And you know, at lunch we'd go to the Art Institute and look at the Monets and get inspired and go back to work and draw details, all ink on Mylar back at that time. But I had friends at the University of Illinois, went for a visit, talked to them, and was offered a design scholarship to go back and teach design and go back to grad school. So I kind of refused to teach design. I really wasn't that much older than the students, and so I taught perspective drawing instead, but took the scholarship and then focused on design, did well at Illinois, won the AIA School Medal, and then decided to start looking for jobs after that.
Longer term, and came back to Kansas City.
I did. I interviewed in Chicago, in Denver, and in Kansas City, obviously from Kansas City. While I was at Illinois, Bill Love, a partner at Kivett & Myers, and then HNTB had recently bought Kivett & Myers. Bill Love's son Jeff was in my class both at KU and at Illinois, so he came to Illinois to recruit. I met Bill on that recruitment trip, and between my 2 years of grad school. And so he said, well, if you come to Kansas City, you've got to come see us. And so he was HNTB was one of the 4 firms I interviewed with in Kansas City.
Well, in fact, then once you decided to go with HNTB, you stayed there the whole rest of your career, just retiring here in the last month or so.
Well, that's right. But people ask me, why did you stay in one place? But, as the design director, and eventually I went in as a designer. I went and I stayed just doing design. I was a shareholder, a partner there. But there were great designers there, great mentors for me with Kerry Goodman, Richard Farnan. But I had the ability to really keep a design dialogue always going. My job always changed because they're the firm. It's a large architectural practice within the setting of an even larger infrastructure firm. But that's really an advantage. And so as the chief design officer, you're involved with, say, 10 to 12 locations for architecture across the country. And we only do large scale projects. And so, we will do, and they're all large scale civically important projects. So my job focused specifically on design and winning work, and then doing those design projects, leading those design teams, which could be in Washington, D.C., or it could be in our Los Angeles office, could be in our Denver office. And so the ability to work with teams across the country, the ability to work on designs across the country. So my job, even though I worked for one firm, I worked for one firm with so many offices, it just changed every day. I never felt restricted, or I never felt like I was bogged down by the fact that it was just one firm. It was the opposite, to tell you the truth.
A lot of variety.
A lot of variety, and I was, I wouldn't say, would I be smart enough to run my own firm? Maybe. I know I was smart enough to help run multiple projects and had people have fun along the way doing design. I was stubborn about design and making sure it was good work, but it was the way that I could affect more projects across the country, and that's what I really wanted to do.
Well, you joined them when Ralph Myers was still there.
That's right. In fact, Ralph was the one, after my 4th interview at HNTB, to convince me to come there. He was the closer, and I had talked to Richard and Carrie and others, but Ralph was the one that really, he also went to school at Illinois, by the way, so he was the one that convinced me to go to HNTB.
And he was really the design partner in Kivett and Myers, which was the most prominent firm in the city by far, getting all of the good projects, and then joining HNTB, and that had just been a few years before. So he was still very prominent and is still a huge figure in Kansas City architecture.
Yeah, that's correct. And he was made a partner, obviously, at HNTB, doing a lot of traveling, setting up new offices. But he still had such an influence on our design culture and office culture here in Kansas City. And so he became a good friend, good mentor, and was such a figure within our office that that's why I went to Kivett Myers. Of course, I knew about Kivett Myers growing up. You studied firms where you wanted to interview, and to be able to come back to your home, and I'm from a very large family. I'm one of 9 kids, and so it was very important for me to be able to come back. But I didn't want to be limited to this market, and so to be able to work at a firm that has national influence, to work with teams from across the country, make so many friends and contacts, and work on projects all across the country, but still be able to, if I got a call from an older brother saying, hey, I need you on the deck by 5:30 on a Friday afternoon, we're all going to be here spontaneously, Mom's coming over, that's great, I can be there. And so that meant a lot to us as well.
Yeah, sort of had a dream situation where you were able to get the dream job and be near your family here in Kansas City. Yeah,
turned out great.
Yeah. But you made the most of it too. You rose to the top in terms of the design field there. And so maybe you would like to talk about some of your big projects, the main projects that you worked on while you were there.
Yeah, sure. So for me, when our kids were really small, I stayed out of the sports market. There's so much travel involved in the sports market. So locally, the first projects that I worked on were like the Swope Parkway Health Center. And I worked directly then a lot when the revitalization of downtown was starting to happen. So I worked very closely with Carrie Goodman and Richard Farnan, and then the developer, Kopek and White and Blitt, as we started to work on the AT&T Town Pavilion. I was the project designer of sort of the bottom 6 floors of that, the retail portion, the renovation of the Bowley building, and the Harsfeld's buildings. I was 32 years old at the time, so there's a large responsibility for a young designer, but it was great to be able to lead that design team. Mm-hmm. And then shortly after that...
this was in like the late 80s.
This was in 80s, yeah. 86.
Yeah.
And so I had been at the firm about 6 years total. And then shortly after that, the Kopek wanted to build a second tower. We tried to build it right on top of the Jones block. At Bill Jones, a brand new store, but Jones at that time decided to leave Kansas City. So we built it the next block over on 1201 Walnut on top of the garage for the town pavilion, mm-hmm. which of course was not meant to have a tower built on top of the garage, so that was an interesting project to mm-hmm. figure out structurally with Chuck Page. But great project, and Carrie let me design that one mm-hmm. As the lead designer.
Because at the time, he was the firm's lead designer.
He was the lead designer and a partner for the firm. I was a project designer. So then we worked together on the master planning for the Barta Hall and the subsequent additions for Barta Hall. I just worked on the master plan. Carrie and then Todd Acapole was the lead designer. And then, of course, BNIM and Tom Nelson were involved also on those projects.
The conference center.
On the conference center, correct. And I was also involved in the renovation of Union Station. So large, civically important projects that we're all very proud of.
The most prominent.
And then after that, when my kids were in junior high, I commuted to Chicago for a year and was the lead designer on Chicago Midway Airport. So I'd leave on Monday and come back on Friday. But our kids are great, and they didn't get in trouble in junior high, so it was fine. But you know, but that was kind of a tough project. We're very proud of that. You know, remember we had 250 phasing drawings on that package just alone. But again, working on complex projects, those are the types of projects I like to do. And after Midway, I was assigned to be the lead designer on Denver Broncos project for their new stadium. And so I think after that, other projects, you know, I was the lead designer on the 49ers new stadium. I was the first lead gold stadium in the NFL. We started to push the envelope for energy and sustainable design. You know, Bob Birkenbaugh is a hard act to follow, but it's certainly a huge influence in the firms across the world, and so it certainly affected our culture as well.
So why don't we talk a little bit about your AIA involvement? You have been active locally, then you grew to regional and national, and on several different, both the leadership as well as then specifically the big firm roundtable. So how did that work? What was it like for you to be here in Kansas City versus being in those other areas?
So I started in AIA, I got out of school in 1980, but I had worked before I went back to grad school. So I actually took remember it was 6 parts and then 9 parts for the exams for our generation. And it was, I took my 6 parts between my 2 years of grad school. And then when I got out of school, I passed those, and I got out of school, I took the remaining 3 parts in December, so I was licensed 6 months after I was at HNTB. And I joined AIA under Ralph's tutelage right after that, and started work on committees. And my first committee work was with Steve McDowell on the programs committee. And our goal was to bring as many design talents to Kansas City for our lecture series.
We had a monthly lecture series at that time, and we'd bring in all kinds of people. And back
I think you were on that committee too.
I was. It was one of the cool things, going and picking these guys up at the airport, chatting with them on the way in.
Yeah, you know, you'd be like 30 years old and pick them up at the airport, and you know, I'd talk and not paying them anything, but you got to know Bill Pedersen from Cohn Pedersen and Fox, and they were great guys. But they loved coming to Kansas City, and we got great attendance. And so eventually, by working through committee, you'd be the treasurer, and then you'd be the secretary, and of course Linda Young would do all the work. But it would be so much fun. And then eventually, I think I ran against Steve for president in '93, and he won. And then the next year, you always lost your first year, you won the next year. And so in 1994, I won the presidency in Kansas City, and enjoyed that a lot. And involvement with purpose was my theme, and we had a great final meeting with the Art Institute and invited the community. Had over 250 people attend that meeting when the Kemper Museum opened, and we honored Crosby Kemper. So the idea was that the AIA would reach out to the community, get them involved, and really honor a civic leader. So I was really always trying to look for ways to have design and show the influence of design to a greater number of people. Not just the architects, we already got it, but let the architecture and KCAA influence more people within the community. And that worked well. So I was asked by folks at some of the conventions, would you consider running for Central States Director? And I did, and in 1997 and 2000, I was on the National AIA Board, which was, it was a lot of fun. There were about 50 people on the board, and I represented our central region. 4 states. Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Nebraska. But you meet so many people on the board, so many interests and issues of the National AIA, and very meaningful to the chapters across the country. And one of the highlights was to be able to nominate a Firm of the Year. And So I nominated Herbert Louis Cruz DuBlanc from Des Moines.
Good. Yeah, so the AIA brought you two together, and it ended up being a good business relationship and a friendship, ultimately. Yeah. You have a large network of friends around the country, and certainly here, that you've kept for decades. So we'd like to hear what you have to say to advice for young architects, people just starting out. What would you say that you wish you knew then, or that you would like to, that you've learned over your career?
So I will tell you that I don't know if it's what the term would be, but and I probably learned this some more from Ralph and maybe just my mom, but it's just being curious and don't let what you're working on restrict what you're learning. And what I mean by that is, I was always very curious about a lot of the projects very early on, but going on in the office, and to keep a design dialogue going within the office, no matter how busy the office is, and everyone's office is busy, and then as you get older, everyone starts to have family matter, whether it's children or travel or whatever it is, but there becomes distractions too. Life just gets busy. But if you don't need to wait for your bosses to set up the opportunities for design dialogue. And I remember when technology started to come in to the offices, and everyone who knows me knows that I'm not a technology guy. I can fill my time card out, or used to, and do email, and that was about it, because I would just hand draw everything, but I would figure it out and then give it to the guy. We'd do it all as we go. But it was, but keep the design dialogue going about design, and don't get in the trap of having the only dialogue be about the tools you use to draw.
Tim, this was some wonderful information about both your career and your advice. We thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing what you're going to do in your next phase of life. And that concludes the this episode of the latest episode of Legends and Leaders from AIA Kansas City. Thanks for watching.